The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program's participants and do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Pushing the Limits Talk Radio Show with your host, Leonard Cardinelli. Brian will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about his debate and kind of promo that. A lot going on in the news. As you know, there was, or you may not know, there was an Armed Services Committee meeting this morning where Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was grilled pretty hard about the war, the plan, any results that may or may not be apparent, the apparent costs and how the costs are escalating. Also, yesterday we had a visit in America from the King of England, second such type of visit in decades, and I thought it was interesting, how King Charles, he put out several Democratic talking points and things that I don't really think Trump agrees with completely. Trump, thinks that global warming and the threat to the earth is a scam, for instance, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. We also have Caroline Leavitt trying to convince America that the violent rhetoric talk is coming from the left when it's actually mostly coming from the right. Also, James Comer was indicted for putting seashells in the sand. That's at 8647. We'll talk about that a little bit, and we were going to have one of our favorite guests, Joe Walsh, on the show, but something came up, so he's not going to be able to make it. And then right around the top of the next hour, we'll be taking your phone calls. After we, go over several subjects, if you feel like you want to call in, you want to agree with me, or you want to agree with the clips, or you disagree, or maybe you just want to share your opinion or get an opinion, we'll be taking calls, and I will announce it. We'll take a short break so Numchuck, our producer, can reset, and we'll take calls from there. So let's get to this morning, to this Armed Services Committee hearing in Congress, because Pete Hegseth is asking for a lot more money, $1.5 trillion, which is the highest budget we've ever had in the military, and trying to say that some of it was to replenish some of the munitions that we've already spent. But he's estimating only $25 billion so far, and obviously that's not accurate. So while being grilled by Representative Adam Smith, Hegseth was caught admitting that Operation Midnight Hammer really accomplished nothing. Hegseth appears to be extremely jumpy during today's testimony and defensive. Let's listen to the clip.
How does it actually lead to that result?
Well, I would take issue with the premise of the question that nothing was done. Operation Midnight Hammer was a very effective.
Well, I didn't say nothing was done. I said in this war.
Ultimately, this is under this administration, unlike other administrations, which cut bad deals and pallets of cash with no ability to oversee whether Iran is actually pursuing a nuclear program. So if we want to litigate JCPOA or the Iran deal, our view, the president's views, that was a very bad deal.
Okay.
It gave them a bunch of money up front.
What's the future?
To fund, you talked about negotiated deals. Allowed them to fund their proxies and spread Hamas and Hezbollah all around the region, build up nuclear capability.
What are we going to do now?
President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer and now to this effort to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table giving it up in a way that
so they
never have it.
So they haven't broken yet. Okay, we haven't gotten there yet for all of the...
Well, their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24/7. So we know where any nuclear material
reclaiming my time for a quick second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands
of...
So
Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before.
Well, there you go. Representative Adam Smith makes a good point. First of all, Operation Midnight Hammer, if you recall, was when Trump decided to use these huge bombs to blow up you have to attack Iran, because now all the enriched uranium is buried underground. Even Iran will admit to that. And then Hegseth tries to say that the JCPOA, the agreement that Obama and John Kerry reached back, before Trump was even president the first time, was to help them use American dollars to fund terror. And that's not what happened. What happened was Barack Obama, through John Kerry, made a deal with Iran and said, if you let us come in and inspect your enrichment facilities, international inspectors, and it was about once a week, or surprise inspections. Whenever they wanted to do inspections, they could show up and do inspections in Iran to make sure that the uranium was not enriched to the point where it became weapons grade. And at that time, there were two estimates. When Obama made the deal, the uranium in Iran was enriched to about 3.5%, and at most 3.67%. Iran said that they were trying to enrich uranium in order to power their country, which by international law is legal. So then Trump comes along in 2017 and says, hey, we're giving them a bunch of money and we're funding terrorism, and that's not what happened. What happened was we released money that we had sanctions on. The USA had sanctions on several banks and on several different types of investments that for Iran, and they froze those assets. And if you look at the history, the money that we paid to Iran was not just lifting the sanctions, it was the interest on their money, which we agreed to pay, and it was nowhere near $20 billion, which it was a fraction of that, which is what Trump is now offering Iran to basically negotiate another peace treaty. And so if the money went to terrorism, which it likely did, that was Iran's money, but at the same time, if the goal was to keep them from having a nuclear bomb and intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities, which it was, then everything was fine. And as you know, my opinion is Trump just, for whatever reason, hates Barack Obama. And I don't know if it's because of his culture or his race, but Trump categorically tries to undo everything that Barack Obama did, whether it worked or not, including the Affordable Care Act, which now Trump has basically destroyed, taking millions of people off medical coverage that could otherwise not afford it because Trump never wanted it in the first place. And over the years, even when Trump was trying to get elected, he said he had a plan for a better Affordable Care Act, that he was going to have a Trump-like coverage, and they had concepts of a plan. But if you remember, they never came up with a plan, and as we sit here today, they did not replace anything to help with the subsidies toward the people who cannot afford their medical coverage, because that's basically what the Affordable Care Act was. And so anything that Obama does, Trump wants to undo. He obviously hates him for no reason. And so now we're at the point where Trump is saying, Pete Hegseth, you'll see in future clips, he's saying that, well, how much should Americans pay to stop nuclear weapons? Well, they don't have nuclear weapons. That's not a thing. Having nuclear weapons is not a thing for Iran. So in the next clip, Representative Ro Khanna, one of my favorites, grills the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, exposing his lack of knowledge of anything other than false talking points for Trump's bogus Iran war. Americans deserve to know if the costs were being asked for, why are they asking for more money? Our costs are up. And before I play the clip, let me just say, I went to the gas station the other day, and my truck was just below 3/4, and I figured, let me put some gas in it because I don't want it to get too low. And I went to the pump and filled it up, and it was $67. And that was just under 3/4 of a tank. And so when Pete Hegseth is trying to say that we want to pay, are you willing to pay for the war? No. I went shopping. I got a couple of handfuls of groceries, and I ended up paying $150 for 2 bags of basic groceries, cantaloupes, some fruit. My wife likes cantaloupe and cottage cheese, so I got some of that. We got some toilet paper, just basics. I like oat milk, so I bought that. But no major expenses, no red meat, no steak, no chicken on that particular visit, and $150 on basic groceries. So no, if Pete's asking if Americans are willing to do that, I am speaking for myself and my family, and I'm saying no, I'm not willing to do that. Let's play the clip.
Give you this point. You're saying that your operation is going on a nuclear weapon. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than what the previous administration did for our economy, what the previous administration did for the inflation, what the previous administration did with COVID, and you're going to lecture this administration about the economy?
You know what is upsetting? Incredible. You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There were still 440 pounds of low-enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to a nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs, you don't know what food costs, you don't know what the operation costs. I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA?
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that type of stuff worked, and then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
So there you go. So the Secretary of Defense is running the department. It is their job to know the budget. And by the way, it is their job to know the strategy of how they're going to, execute the war and what the goals are. And from what I'm hearing, he doesn't know any of that. And then he says, well, there's a cost, just like every other war. I'm not willing to pay $5,000 more a year, $168 billion on our backs for a war that makes no sense. They said they were there for the nukes. There were no nukes. That's not even a thing. That's not even a real thing that they were there for. Then they're talking about the uranium. And if you remember the negotiations before we bombed Iran, where the 48 top officials were getting together to discuss how they were going to handle the negotiations with America, they said, we're willing to not have a nuclear program if you do A, B, and C. They said, we're willing to take the uranium. And I think a sticking point was they were talking about Russia, a third party country holding the uranium that was already enriched, but at least Iran was willing to agree to get the enriched uranium out of their country. And so Ro Khanna is riding Pete Hegseth about, do you even know how much we're paying? And then he gets him to try to admit that it's costing us money, and gas prices are more than double that they were before the war. Grocery prices, electricity prices, power prices. If you go and buy tires at the tire shop, that used to be a few $100s. Now, you're paying $1,200 to $1,500 for a set of 4 new tires with the installation. We're not stupid. The people listening to this show and the people out there are not stupid. We're not living in an alternate reality. We know when we have to pay more for things, when just our basic necessities have been going through the roof, our gas bill, and we're tired of it. We're tired of it. We need a break. And then Hegseth says, basically there's no end in sight. He's like, hey, this is a 2-month war. What about Vietnam? What about this? What about Vietnam? Vietnam, you could argue, America lost and was 19 or 19 and a half years, and we lost somewhere between 56 and 63,000 military personnel. And so you're going to compare that to what's going on now, and I just think Pete Hegseth should probably go back to reporting the news, because he doesn't make a very good Secretary of Defense, in my opinion. In the next clip, Representative John Garamendi berates Hegseth and calls him a liar right to his face. Quote, "You've been lying to the American people about this war from day one. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster," he says, "at every level. The strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. Despite President's promise to lower cost of living, gas prices up to 40% inflation and is soaring. So much for lowering the cost of living," he says. "The President has gotten himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes." End quote. And remember, when Trump was trying to get elected, he said, no more forever wars. I'm going to stop every war. The war in Ukraine and Russia, I'll do that in less than 24 hours before I'm even inaugurated. I'm going to stop that war. I'll stop the war between Israel and, at the time, Hamas, and said that he was going to be a peacetime president. Well, he just had his Secretary of Defense say today that, hey, it's only been 2 months, and so what if it's a forever war? Basically, that's what he was saying. So I would like to, I thought this clip was important because it really shows Pete Hegseth's disregard for how serious this war is.
You and the President are ever-changing reasons for the war. You've misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level. Despite the President's promise to lower the cost of living, gas prices are up 40% and inflation is soaring. So much for lowering the cost of living. The President has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes. It is in America's and indeed the world's interest that he succeed in that. I yield back. You and the President are ever-changing reasons for the war.
Right. And so what he's saying in part is that every time people want to understand the war in Iran, and remember, this is your tax dollars, your money is paying for this war. And every time we want an answer on what's going on, they produce a goal, and then the next day they move the goalpost. And the next day they move that goalpost. So we have to have some clips. We're going to take a break for a moment. We have some clips that need to be set up, and we're going to give Numchuck just a moment to get him set up, and we'll be right back.
Nevada State Assembly, District 16. My website is www.eoc4fornevada.org. I am the Affordability, Public Schools, Funding, Veterans Benefits Expansion, Safe Immigration Reform candidate. Please donate to my committee to elect Eva O. Chase, care of Nevada State Bank. I am the choice for 2026. EOC for Nevada State Assembly District 16, Eva Olivia Chase. Paid for and approved by Eva Olivia Chase.
Clear Sky Resorts invites you to escape the ordinary with a vacation that's extraordinary. Experience one-of-a-kind glamping vacations full of fun and adventure at their unique Sky Dome Resort near the Grand Canyon. To ensure every Clear Sky Resorts vacation is fun and memorable, they offer lots of family-friendly activities, the majority of them free for guests. And because every great adventure deserves great food, their resident food truck promises to keep guests deliciously fueled for all the fun. To book your reservation today, please call 1-888-704-4445 or visit clearskyresorts.com.
Okay, we're back on Ocean Limits Radio Talk Show with your host, Leonard Cardinelli. For those of you who are asking, Brian Shapiro is the host every day here, Monday through Friday, and he will be back tomorrow. Later on, we'll be taking your calls at 702-221-7283. Don't call in yet, but I'm giving the number out so people are familiar with it. We will be taking calls in probably about a half hour to get through these clips and the news of the day. And so we're encouraging you, and like in the live chat, Deborah said, "Hey trolls, why don't you call in?" So yeah, I mean, we're not afraid to talk to people who have an opposing view. The one thing that we can't do is if you call and you say you want to talk about something serious, and then we put you on the phone and you start cursing and saying the F word, then we got to kick you off, because we're also on AM radio and FM radio, and they don't allow cursing. The streaming, obviously the podcast does, but we're not allowed to do that because we're on multiple radio channels, AM and FM. Tomorrow, Brian will be back, and he will be breaking down the debate with Rachel Wilson. Rachel Wilson is the wife of Andrew Wilson, who Brian has debated on several occasions, and it gets quite heated. And from what I understand, it got quite heated with his wife, Rachel Wilson. Some people didn't like what was said on both sides. Some people didn't like what was said on Brian's side. Some didn't like what was said on Rachel's side. And then I think Joe Kerr was there, who's kind of like he's kind of like, it's not like Robin for Batman. It's lower than that. It's kind of like Alfred the Butler for Batman. He's just a guy that hangs around for Andrew Wilson and tries to read off cards and read off his phone and read off the internet to try to say clever things. So you'll see a bit of that as well. Okay, moving on. As most of you know, the King of England, King Charles, he visited with Donald Trump yesterday, and then he made an address to Congress. Now, his mother did that in 1991, 35 years ago. So whenever the king or the queen come to America and address the Congress, it's a big deal. It's not something that's common. It's not something that is done often. I think Donald Trump was trying to use the king to kind of assimilate himself with the king, so that they, thinking, wink, wink, we're both really kings, but they're not. The King of England, as you know, is a political figure. They also have a prime minister, and they have a legislature. So it's not king in the traditional sense. But in that same regard, Donald Trump and his administration allowed him to address a joint meeting of Congress, which could turn out to be not as beneficial for Trump as he first planned it. In the first clip, King Charles of England is quoted saying, I'm inspired by the profound respect that develops as people of different faiths grow in their understanding of each other. So yes, he got a little religious. He's a strong Christian. He talked about Christianity, and he wasn't afraid to go there. This is not a religious show, but like I say all the time, Brian and I are not afraid to really talk about any subject because we think it's important if it's vital to America and how America moves forward, or how they have dealt with things in the past. So let's go to the first clip and listen to King Charles of England.
And, Mr. Speaker, for many here, and for myself, the Christian faith is a firm anchor and daily inspiration that guides us, not only personally, but together as members of our community. Having devoted a large part of my life to interfaith relationships and greater understanding, it is that faith in the triumph of light over darkness which I have found confirmed countless times. Through it, I am inspired by the profound respect that develops as people of different faiths grow in their understanding of each other. It is why, it is my hope, my prayer, that in these turbulent times, working together and with our international partners, we can stem the beating of plowshares into swords. I am mindful that we are still in the season of Easter, the season that most strengthens my hope. It is why I believe with all my heart that the essence of our two nations is a generosity of spirit and a duty to foster compassion, to promote peace, to deepen mutual understanding, and to value all people of all faiths and of none.
Well, there you go. King Charles, a worldwide message, a message to all, especially to America, that we all have to work together. And he mentioned compassion and peace, which, come right out of the New Testament. That is what Jesus preached. In John 3:16, a famous, quote from the Bible, God so loved the world, right? Not just a specific group of people, that he gave his only begotten son. And so we have to understand that he also mentions all faiths. And Christianity is not for just Christians or people who want to be Christians. Everyone is called in the Bible, everyone is called to repent. Everyone is called to have faith. Everyone. And so it's not a specific group of people. And what the king was trying to say, and I'm not sure Donald Trump even got this message. I don't think Donald Trump's people even understand what he's talking about, is that we all have to work together in the world. And yes, he was talking about England and the UK, and he was talking about NATO, but through Christian terms and through collaborative effort. Let's all work together, and as part of his belief system. In the next clip, King Charles is speaking about nature. And I got to tell you that I was surprised, because I kind of knew where he was going with it when he mentioned it. And as you know, Trump, he doesn't believe in global warming. He's not afraid to destroy nature, drill, baby, drill, and, destroy nature up in Alaska so we can drill natural gas pipelines and oil pipelines. And so I thought it was interesting that the king went down this road. He was speaking about nature, obviously, global danger of issues like warming. And then the camera switches to the EPA administrator, who's supposed to help protect the earth, Lee Zeldin, following this line from King Charles: "We ignore at our peril the fact that these natural systems, in other words, nature's own economy, provide the foundation for our prosperity and our national security." And so King Charles cleverly tied in what's going on in the world and how human beings are not really taking care of the planet the way they should, into their own economic terms of nature by producing clean water and producing fruit, producing healthy, animals. If you decide to, if you eat steak and chicken. And so I thought it was clever the way he made a transition, but it's definitely a democratic point of view, and it's not consistent with what Trump and his people believe whatsoever. In the next clip, King Charles is speaking about democracy's check on power, and he's using the Magna Carta. Oh, I'm sorry. Play the clip. My bad.
As we celebrate the beauty that surrounds us, our generation must decide how to address the collapse of critical natural systems, which threatens far more than the harmony and essential diversity of nature. We ignore at our peril the fact that these natural systems, in other words, nature's own economy, provide the foundation for our prosperity and our national security. As we celebrate.
So, sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. So I think that King Charles brought up a lot of valid points about nature and the earth, and it's true. If we don't start taking care of it, some of the glaciers in the Arctic are melting at an alarming rate, and so it's something that we have to constantly look out for. As I look in the live chat, someone in the live chat is claiming they're Rachel Wilson. So it may or may not be Rachel Wilson. It could be a troll for all we know. And I don't know her. She doesn't know me. But if she's in the live chat, obviously she wants to watch the show and see what's going on. She's more than welcome to call in. But I will tell you, Rachel, that I did not finish watching the whole debate from last night. I was preparing the show for today, so I wouldn't be too familiar on how things went last night. In this next clip, King Charles is speaking about democracies and the checks on power using the Magna Carta as the example. As you know, Magna Carta of 1215, translated the Great Charter, is a foundational document that forced King John of England to accept that the monarch was subject to the law and not above it, establishing the rights as trial by jury, due process, and the right to face your accuser, influencing modern democracy, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Let's watch the clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
The U.S. Supreme Court Historical Society has calculated that Magna Carta is cited in at least 160 Supreme Court cases since 1789, not least as the foundation of the principle that executive power is subject to checks and balances.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, that was, to me, that was an affront to President Trump and his administration. King Charles wants to make sure that America and the world understands that executive power is subject to checks and balances. And that's why we have three branches of government. The executive branch executes, but they're not more powerful than the legislative, and they're not more powerful than the judiciary, that they all have equal power. And if a federal judge says, hey, this is illegal and you can't do it, that has as much weight as a president, and writing an executive order to override judge's ruling is not how the Constitution works. And I think that is the point that he was trying to get to. But you could argue that, I don't really see Trump and his people expecting that kind of comment. I think that was kind of a blind side right there. And so he got quite a bit of applause for that. So I guess for the Republicans, there's a difference between, supporting someone who's trying to be a king and just being, cowardly quiet about it. So being quiet and not speaking about it, not being against someone is not the same as supporting them. And so, but they're showing support by allowing Trump to continue to run this country like like a dictator. So in the next clip, King Charles brings up the defense of Ukraine, which I was really surprised. I thought he might glaze over it a little bit and give his opinion, but he really gets into it, and he's using the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks on America as an example. And I can tell you, from my personal experience, in 2001, I was a police officer. I wasn't a sergeant or a lieutenant yet, and I did watch the the Twin Towers get attacked live on TV. And I got a call from my sergeant at the time who said that every police officer was throughout the entire nation was being called in, and we were going to work 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off until further notice, because we did not know the extent of the attack yet. We didn't know how many cities they were in. We didn't know if there'd be additional attacks. And so it was federally mandated that all police officers report. So for me, it was a very personal experience. It was a very wow moment, like, this really happened and it could continue to happen. So when the country was pulled together and we all decided that we all wanted to go after terrorism, and the UK was one of our biggest backers, it was an important time in America. The polling, if you remember, was about 80% at the time, saying that yes, we should go and bomb Iraq, and we can have that talk about whether they had weapons of mass destruction or not, because they did not, and that was proven later on. But everybody was behind it, unlike the Iran war, where Americans are going, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What's the goal? When they were willing to negotiate, why did we even attack them? A week or two away from nuclear capabilities, which is not accurate. So let's go ahead and play the clip.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together, as our people have done so for more than a century, shoulder to shoulder, through 2 world wars, the Cold War, Afghanistan, and moments that have defined our shared security. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people. It is needed in order to secure a truly just and lasting peace.
So there you go. King Charles, obviously their position is that we should be defending Ukraine. Yes, England, United Kingdom, European countries are a lot closer to the war that Trump said he would stop within 24 hours. Hasn't been able to do it. And then Joe Biden was trying to supply Ukraine with as much ammunition and military weapons as possible, and trying to help fund them so they can continue the war. And that was obviously stopped when Trump took over. And so the Ukrainian people, very brave. I don't know how they're hanging in there against Russia. There was another attack last week on Ukraine, and I think 14 people got killed, and they're bombing, Russia's bombing civilian targets. So when you start talking about Iran, and then Trump says, well, Iran doesn't treat their people properly, and there's Islamic ideology is anti-civil rights and anti-constitution and anti-human rights. So we're going to go in there and change the regime. Well, if he cares so much about evil regimes and wants to change those regimes and wants to help the people, who's worse than Russia? It'd be hard to think of someone who's worse than Russia. Maybe North Korea, because North Korea doesn't have as much money as Russia. And if you're familiar with how they treat their people, they hold a lot of money back so they can have this amazing military, and Kim Jong-un and his people can live like kings in their own country, and the people are basically given the minimum amount of food. I mean, that's about as bad as it gets. So why doesn't he address that with Kim Jong-un? Why was it Iran? A lot of people say it was as a favor to Israel. Israel wants them out of the picture so Israel could control the Middle East and control that narrative. Donald Trump told Israel to stop bombing Lebanon. He said, you need to stop. It's hurting negotiations. And then the last couple of days, I don't know how many bombs Israel sent to Lebanon. They blew the crap out of them in the last couple of days. So there is no ceasefire. It's all BS. It's all lies. It's all sleight of hand. Don't look over here. Look over here. And so the King of England did a great job standing up for Ukraine in that speech. Moving on to political violence and political rhetoric. As you know, Brian and I do not support any form of political violence. And we both believe that political violent rhetoric can be very dangerous, both to the individual and to others. So let me just say for the record that we do not agree with that kind of rhetoric. And then we're going to play a clip of Caroline Leavitt, Trump's puppy, out there talking about how the Democrats are the ones who are using the violent language and saying that they actually caught her during an interview prior to the White House Correspondents' Dinner where there was a shooting and they took the shooter into custody. No one was injured. But before the Correspondents' Dinner, they have Caroline Leavitt on camera saying shots will be fired. Let's watch it.
To rumble, is he not?
He is ready to rumble. I will tell you, this speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room. So everyone should tune in. It's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
I love it all. And you wrote most of it, you said.
I can't take credit. In true Donald Trump fashion, the man puts his pen to the paper himself. So it's a lot of his own work.
Right. And so, was that a Freudian slip? I'm not really a conspiracy theorist. That's not what I subscribe to. I'm more factual based. But looking at how all of that went down yesterday, I think it was Todd Blanche announced, regarding the investigation of the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, that they're not sure. They're investigating. They're not sure who shot the Secret Service uniformed officer in the chest, and obviously the rounds were caught by his vest, and he's okay. Thank God. We're glad the officer's okay, but it still needs to be investigated. And so when I start listening to the different facts and how investigations are done, I mean, I did investigations for 25 years. I ran investigations. I was the watch commander over the city most of my career as a supervisor. And so all the decision making most nights when I was working on swing shift came down to me. So I understand the intricacies of an investigation and everything that happened there, and Trump agreeing to do the Correspondents' Dinner out of nowhere after not going for years and years, knowing that Trump's fragile ego was going to get hammered at that Correspondents' Dinner. It all didn't add up, and I would really like to know in the future, if we're able to find out. It may take years. I would really like to know the story behind the story. The next clip is Trump saying that Dems are encouraging the violence. We have Trump in multiple clips, some before he was president, talking about, quote unquote, just shoot him. Let's play the clip.
In the old days, boom, firing squad. No, it's true. Boom, gun, bang,
Bing, bong. When we were strong, bing, and it goes quickly, right? It's called, you're dead.
in the old days, boom.
So who's who's promoting the violent rhetoric? And I don't. We're coming up on phone calls here pretty soon, and I promise I'll get to the phone calls because I know we have a number of people who just love to call in, and the phone lines usually fill up fairly quickly. And so we'll be getting to that soon. But if we have a little extra time at the end of this segment, we're going to play multiple quotes from MS Now, showing, quote after quote, time after time, where Trump is reported to say, things like, we're going to destroy a whole civilization. They're going to cease to exist. Things like that. We're going to blow them out of the water. So who really has the violent rhetoric? Who's really responsible for the worst parts of that? So then in the next clip, we have one of our favorites, JoJo from Jersey. As you know, she's been on the phone. I mean, not on the phone. She's been on the show many times, and she's just a fire plug. She's always full of energy. She's always has something to say. And here she is on Piers Morgan talking about how this violent rhetoric affects people and actually affected her. And it shows how this violent talk can influence people who are probably already unstable anyway, and how it can influence them and lead to very dangerous situations. Let's play the clip.
Yes, I just wanted to say a couple of things. Donald Trump has pardoned and or commuted the sentences of 1,600 plus people who attacked our Capitol on January 6th. They're looking to vacate the criminal convictions of the people who coordinated that attack. But as a personal anecdotal story here, Donald Trump made jokes about Paul Pelosi's attack. Donald Trump has repeatedly made jokes about Paul Pelosi's attack. I'm a mom of two. I'm a single mom of two. About a couple of months after Paul Pelosi's attack, in conjunction with one of Donald Trump's jokes, I got a series of text messages with pictures of my home. And then in short order, I got a phone call from someone who sounded like they were in the car and said to me, "We know you're home. We know your kids are home. We are going to Paul Pelosi you next." That was on the heels of a joke that Donald Trump had made about Paul Pelosi. So please spare me this performative pearl clutching about how it is only people on the left, when no one on that side is willing to hold him accountable for jokes like that, for rhetoric like that. I experienced that personally. I had to call my own police department. I had to call the FBI. I had to live in perpetual, and still do, perpetual fear of violence against myself and my children. And Donald Trump owns that. So to pretend that he is above the fray here and that this is the Jimmy Kimmels of the world and it's not landing squarely at his feet, then I'm sorry, but that just doesn't pass the smell test.
So there you are, good friend JoJo having a personal experience, and I can only imagine how daunting it would be for people to say that, they know where you live, you're next. And JoJo, she's a firecracker. She says it like it is. She uses harsh language. I believe she's on the right side of history. I believe that she's not afraid to call out lies and deception. She's not afraid to say, hey, whatever happened last night, they're only giving you talking points, and lay out the whole case, a factual case for what actually happened. And I can only say that we're hoping, JoJo, hopefully you'll be okay and this will pass. But it took a lot of guts to go on Piers Morgan and to explain her position to everyone. And like I said, Brian and I, we don't condone political violence. We don't condone political violent rhetoric that would incite people who are most likely unstable anyway and on edge anyway. And it just takes a little bit of a push to push those people over the edge. And now they're thinking nothing but violence. In the next clip, so we're going to switch to the White House ballroom. You know, I could probably talk for an hour on this because it's so ridiculous, and what's going on there is so ridiculous. But I'm going to have some clips help me along. The first one is Trump explaining how the White House ballroom is not going to cost the taxpayers any money. This is how it started. Quote, "We did this with no charge to the taxpayer whatsoever. This is all donations of friends of mine and people who love our country, love the White House, not one penny. And it's a very expensive ballroom." Let's play the clip.
So, and just in closing, I wanted to, you've read a lot. We're building a ballroom for 150 years. They've wanted a great ballroom at here, even a ballroom, not a great one. Just give me a room, because this is a very small room, can hold very small numbers of people. And they've wanted a great ballroom, and we're going to build the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world. There'll be nothing like it. And you're looking right here at the entrance. This is a knockout panel, exactly where the gold curtains are. And when that gets opened, there's a magnificent walkway that goes into what will be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world. So we did this no charge to the taxpayer whatsoever. This was all donations made by friends of mine and people that love our country. They love the White House, Preservation Society, the whole group, but not one penny of, and it's a very expensive building, very expensive ballroom, but beautiful, beautiful, in keeping with the White House, an enhancement to the White House. But they've needed it for years. When they had a big event, when the president of China comes in, when somebody comes in of magnitude, they put a tent out on the lawn. If it rained, you were in deep trouble, because the only part of the lawn that they can do it is a very low section. So it would be, a little embarrassing when you're sitting down with the king of Saudi Arabia and he's sitting in a puddle with 4 inches of water over his shoes. It was not exactly good, but it's under construction. But right through, that's going to be a very famous portal for hopefully hundreds of years, because what we're building is really special. But so important to say, because nobody ever reports it. It will be totally, totally tax-free. Not one penny of tax will be donated to this, and it's going to be something that I think the country will be very proud of when it opens. But for
not one penny, President Trump says. And so we're going to play another clip that ties into that. But before I do, I'll ask you. You guys listened to the same clip I did. Was that a little incoherent about drowning the shoes and Saudi Arabian princes? And I trying to connect the dots, and it was just I guess that's his weave. He says he likes to weave things, and no one else knows what he's talking about because it's all in his head. So I'm going to go right into the next clip. This is Lauren Boebert saying that she's introducing legislation that will result in Congress agreeing to pay for the ballroom. "I'm working on legislation to ensure we are getting the ballroom funded." Now, does that sound like not one penny? There's obviously a national security element to that, and it needs to be done. Let's play the clip.
What are your thoughts on some of the discussions about the ballroom and being included in the
I'm working on legislation to ensure that we are getting the ballroom funded. It's obviously a national security element to that, and it needs to be done.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that a judge allowed a woman he approved her lawsuit because she walked by with her dog and thought it was ugly.
Is there any better use for taxpayer dollars than a ballroom?
Are you kidding? There's like hardly any money here that is actually going to that. He has got it. He has it funded. We just have to get it approved to get the lawsuit over with.
Is it an issue of like the Congressional Registry of Historic Places? Like what's the authorization process there?
Do you think passing a War Powers Resolution Act to save the $2 billion?
So there you go. Trump, on the one hand, saying it's not going to cost us a penny. It's all privately funded. Don't worry about it. Not your tax dollars. And then it goes in the next clip to Lauren Boebert saying she's introducing legislation that will pay for the ballroom. So once again, hiding the ball, don't look over here, look over here. A little bit of, between the war and the Epstein files and the ballroom and, everything else, it really is hard to keep up with. But remember what Steve Bannon said when Trump was first elected and inaugurated. He said he told what the plan was. Steve Bannon said we're going to flood the zone, as he calls it, and he recommended to Trump that his people put out 3 major stories, or even if they're not real, any story every day, just to flood the zone and cause confusion, so no one could really focus on the real problems. So that was part of their, I believe it was part of the 2025 plan that they had talked about. So this next clip, another good friend of the show, Adam Mockler. We all love Adam, and God bless him because his career is really taking off. He's been on MSNBC. I saw him on CNN. I saw him on other news programs. He's a great debater, very intelligent, very knowledgeable, and I love when he kicks the crap out of Scott Jennings on CNN, because Scott Jennings is what we call our word salad sandwich of the day type person. He talks, and when he talks, it's not factual. It's just a bunch of Fox News talking rhetoric, and I really don't like listening to the guy. So Adam Mockler is analyzing an interview of Trump, berating 60 Minutes anchor CBS News's Norah O'Donnell for quoting the manifesto. Remember, she's not accusing him or saying he had anything to do with it. She's quoting the manifesto of the gunmen who shot up the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And the question in my mind is, or in everyone's mind, is why is he taking it so personally? Let's listen to the clip.
I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me.
When the president of the United States is having to say those words, deny that 12 hours after somebody tried to rush the lobby and got tackled, we are in a very, very depraved reality.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. Quote, I'm no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to
Well, I
that?
was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people. Horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein.
Okay, a few things. First of all, when you're explaining, you're losing. Number two, he was not totally exonerated whatsoever. He was not exonerated at all. He was held civilly liable for sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll in the state of New York.
But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that, because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and I
these
was
are
never,
the gunman's words.
excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
I literally just said on television the other day how Donald Trump can't even look at a female reporter without attacking her. I also really like that once he starts saying, I'm not a rapist, I'm not a pedophile, she essentially says, oh, you thought he was talking about you. Just take a listen. This is really good.
I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me.
Ooh, that's a really, really good line from her, because she didn't say it was about him. He just assumed immediately when he saw the word rapist and pedophile that it was him. Very embarrassing from the president of the United States.
So there you go. The reason I wanted to post this clip is Adam, Adam Mockler breaks it down really well, and it does make you question. I mean, I'm not a Trumper. I'm not a MAGA. I have not been indoctrinated to, his beliefs and been mind washed. So I believe anything he says. And if Trump, the MAGAs, if Trump says, water's not wet, that's just a Democratic hoax, they'll believe it without any factual proof, without any scientific proof. And so I thought that was an important clip. So the next clip, acting attorney general, who wants to be obviously the attorney general, he's auditioning for Donald Trump even as we speak. Todd Blanche announces the indictment of James Comey for a seashell post. That's right, folks. He posted seashells in the sand that read 8647, which to me does not even begin to come close to a crime at all. Let's play the clip and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody in North Carolina returned an indictment
North Las
against
Vegas at the
James Comey on 2 counts.
North Las Vegas.
The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years.
So there's James Comey talking about how 8647, just so you know, some of you may know, some may not, but you know, I was a police officer in the city of North Las Vegas for 25 years. I spent much of my time as a supervisor. I went to many calls for service using the word 86. So let's say I'm on patrol and dispatch says, hey, there's a man at the bar who's the bartender who says that somebody in the bar is causing a problem and they want him 86th. Well, when my officers go over to the bar to take care of the man who's causing a disturbance and they want him 86th, we understand that to be trespassing. So they don't want him killed. Okay, that's not a threat on the man's life. And if somebody has been 86th and they're in the computer as being prior trespass or 86, we can go over and we can arrest them or cite them for trespassing. So 86 means to remove someone or that they're trespassing. Where they came up with 86 meaning to kill someone, I have no idea. That is not even in reality. It's not even a real thing. That's not a thing. 86 meaning hurt or kill someone is not a real thing. It's not a violent expression. And it's mostly associated in the legal terms with trespassing, which is a misdemeanor, which in most cases we would show up at the bar and we tell the person they're trespass or 86th, or the bartender wants you 86th, and take them outside and take down their name and tell them they're not allowed back on the property. And how they turn that into a federal indictment, is beyond me. I have no idea what that was about. And then we're going to play another clip. I know we're coming up on phone calls, and we'll get there, I promise. The next clip is Brian. He's on Pierce Morgan. And this one is titled Brian Shreds Christopher Ruffo for not calling out Trump rhetoric. Let's play the clip.
I want to address Chris real quick. So, Chris, first of all, let me just say this. I'm very sorry for the loss of your friend, Charlie Kirk. What happened to him was horrible. Even though I wasn't a fan of Charlie Kirk's, he didn't deserve that. His family didn't deserve that. And I've called out everyone on the left that has celebrated his death. It doesn't mean you have to celebrate his life, but celebrating his death is despicable. But with that being said, Chris, you want people held to account. I rarely hear you talking about Donald Trump. Why don't we hold him to account as well? He just called on the execution of 6 Democrat elected officials several months ago. The buck should stop with him. He's the leader of the free world. Listen, I don't agree with anybody on social media celebrating any form of violence on either side. But there is a difference between somebody with 20 followers on social media saying horrible things about what happened to Charlie Kirk, which I don't condone, and then the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, who doesn't tone down the rhetoric. Even at his rallies, he said, I'd like to rough that guy up. And, I'll pay for you guys and I'll pay for your legal fees. So it has to start from the top all the way down, Chris. I'm with you. I don't want anybody endorsing any violence at any time. I'm with you 150%. But I also want to remind you that the first assassination attempt of Donald Trump was, luckily it wasn't executed, but the first bullet that went towards Donald Trump was done by a registered Republican. The second guy that on the assassination attempt was a guy that once voted for Donald Trump. So in 2016, will you also call out Donald Trump? I hear you calling out one
So
side
is
of
your
the
argument
aisle.
that Donald Trump
Will you-
is responsible
Had it
for the
coming.
assassination attempts against him?
Didn't
what you're
say
saying?
that. I didn't say that. I didn't.
Yes,
Let
you
me
did.
clarify.
Just own your words,
Joe,
pussy.
yeah. Chris, okay, this guy's not serious. He's going to call me a pussy. Just be quiet.
You
Let
call
me
me an
talk to the
idiot.
serious
What's the difference?
Adult. Let's talk to the adults in the room.
Idiot,
Okay, I'm going to talk.
idiot
to
is
Chris.
mature. Pussy
Chris,
is juvenile. Okay,
Gavin,
got it.
I'm addressing Chris right now. Okay, so
I know,
Chris,
I'm
here's the
mocking
deal,
you as
right?
you do.
I'm not blaming Donald Trump for his assassination attempts. All I'm calling out and asking for respectfully is people like you to call out Donald Trump for also making the temperature a little bit higher than it should be. I will call out any violence on any side of the aisle, and I hold them to account first. But it also would do a lot of justice to the country if Donald Trump didn't call for executions of elected officials, if Donald Trump didn't say, I'd like to rough that guy up, if Donald Trump every single day didn't attack half the country. There is a opportunity for Donald Trump to bring the country together. My problem, Chris, is I don't think the guy who you support is capable of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're talking about a false equivalence. Should Trump moderate his rhetoric? Fine. Yeah, in some instances, I think that's probably true. But I don't think that that's equivalent to people that are setting up in a sniper position and shooting at conservative commentators, shooting at an American president. And I don't think that it's fair to say that the assassination attempts against Donald Trump were somehow part of right-wing political violence. Obviously, when you're trying to shoot a conservative president, you could easily categorize that as an anti-right or pro-left method of violence. And so I think you're trying to muddy the waters because you probably have the sneaking suspicion that your side is in fact the one that's out of control.
Hey, Pierce, let me defend Brian just for a sec. Chris, I think you continue to downplay this factor of Trump. Pierce, we've never had a president who so engages in, it's part of who he is, divisive, cruel, and hateful language. When all the Trump supporters the last day or two said, we got to tone down the rhetoric, and yet they don't talk about his rhetoric, Chris.
So there you go, Joe Walsh.
There's a gentleman from California, Mr. Con.
So there you go. I thought Brian did a good job of putting them in their place. I don't have any idea where they were trying to go with it, but we're going to play a second clip that kind of goes in hand. In the next one, Brian tells Proud Boys leader to go back to his Klan rally on Pierce Mortgage. There are more clips, and I believe when Brian. So let me catch up on Brian a little bit. He's traveling today. He was out of town. He did a debate with Rachel Wilson yesterday. He's going to break that debate down tomorrow. And as I told people earlier, I didn't have time last night to even watch the full debate. And so even if I did, I wouldn't be breaking it down today because Brian is going to have first crack at breaking down that debate. And these are some clips from Pierce Morgan. Pierce Morgan is, in the millions of subscribers. So it's important to show the clips so the PTL audience and can see what he's doing with his time and not just always in the studio. So let's play the clip.
Okay, I agree. So Joe, I agree with what you just said.
Go ahead, Pierce.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, go on, Brian.
I was just saying, listen, I respect Joe Walsh so much, and I agree with what he just said. The only point that I was trying to make to Gavin is that there's violence in all different places, right? But if you're going to tell us that cops weren't beaten on January 6th, and some people, not all, not even the majority, but some people committed some very violent acts and they were convicted in a court of law, and Gavin can't just admit that some of those
Michael
people
Byrd
are not
convicted
hostages.
for killing Ashley Babbitt?
Hold on a second.
We have one
I'm not
riot
talking
every
about
100 years. You have a riot a year for 100
Gavin,
years, and we have to keep hearing
Gavin.
about January 6th, January 6th. Oh,
I know you don't want
that
Gavin,
riot that
Gavin,
ended the world.
I can tell you right now, Gavin, here's the difference. Black Lives Matter. Let's talk about that for a moment because I know you love talking about that. Anybody who
Marxist
beat anybody
scam,
on January
killed 25
hold on, Gavin.
people.
Gavin, let me finish. Anybody during a Black Lives Matter protest that committed any violent acts, it's wrong, and I want them held to the highest extent of the law. I don't blame our court system. I don't blame anybody but the people who committed those violent acts. Why won't you say the same about January 6th?
Because BLM started the fight. Patriots did not start January 6th. BLM and Antifa started a 2-year fight that burned down this country, caused $3 billion worth of damage, cost 25 plus lives. The only major deaths, on January 6th were Capitol Police killing patriots.
Not true.
Yet we have to hear about this. Why aren't I hearing about the jihadist deaths of the past 10 years or the trans shooting of the past 10 years? We are on this scrutiny where we go through conservative behavior with a fine-tooth comb.
So, quick point I want to make,
nailed to
Gavin.
the cross for January 6th. Yet you guys get away with an assassination attempt from 2 days ago.
All right, hold on.
Paul
Okay, so
Allen's
Gavin, quick
manifesto sounded like your show. You guys are in bed with your extremists. We eschew ours.
No, you're not. Gavin, quick point I just want to make to the panel.
I
to
love synagogue shootings. I'm totally down with that.
Gavin, just be quiet for 20 seconds. I just want to make a quick point here. So, guys, this is what Joe was just talking about. Joe, I don't speak for you, but I'm calling out all violence, whether it be Black Lives Matters or January 6th. Gavin, once again, called, no, you're not. You just called everybody patriots on January 6th, you idiot. That's what you just said.
Yeah,
you just called all the people, some of them.
Pick a fight.
Well, you're a
Don't
moron,
pick a
then.
fight with me.
You're an idiot. All right. Well, good luck at your Klan rally tonight, Mr. Grand Wizard.
Perfect.
I actually think. I mean, let me jump in there.
That is
let me
so
jump.
perfect.
Let me jump
The
in here.
Klan rally. Perfect.
I don't understand. Surely the intellectually honest. But let me come back to Chris Ruffer. The intellectually honest position on this is surely that you should be able to condemn whatever party you have an allegiance to, whatever. You should be able to condemn unreservedly all violence against police on January 6th and all violence against police or civilians or stores or whatever during any of the BLM riots. To me, that is an intellectually honest position. The moment you start saying, well, that side were terrible, when they rioted, it was acceptable. When they did it, it's unacceptable. The moment you start doing that, you'll be intellectually, to me.
Is that it? Okay, so the important clips, Brian standing up to Gavin is so important, and it's so fun for me to watch, these MAGA grifters scramble and try to make sense out of something that makes no sense. Look, folks, we all saw what we saw on January 6th. We saw police officers getting crushed in the door. We saw them getting beaten with poles. They were sprayed with bear spray, not even human spray. We saw people attacking the Capitol, breaking windows, entering under violent circumstances, chasing down legislators, building a noose outside of the, building a galley outside on the concourse and calling for Mike Pence's to be hung. So that, let's make no mistake. We all know what we saw. We all know what happened. And just a really good clip. I'm sure Brian will talk more about the Piers Morgan show. And now it comes to your favorite part, phone calls. Call us at 702-221-7283. We'll be taking your phone calls, and you can talk about whatever you want. You can bring up whatever subject, and we'll do our best to chop it up and see what people have to say today. That's 702-221-7283. Phone lines are open now, and Numchuck is right on top of it. We have any callers yet? Yeah? Corey? Okay, let's go to Corey. Corey, hi, this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Leonard, we have these absolute and total clowns on the Republican side, on the conservative side, hurling insults and playing their game of let's defend Donald, while all the time they're just making it out to seem more and more like they're the ones who are out of their minds. And I can't see what's the point of saving face at this point? What do you think?
I think it's very hard for me to relate to people who live in an alternate reality, people who have been indoctrinated into a philosophy. And now you have more and more you see on the news, on social media, more and more you see MAGA saying, I was wrong. I voted for him 3 times, and I never thought he would do this to us, and I never thought this would happen. And I don't agree with the war, and I don't agree with canceling the SNAP program and food stamps. But then again, there's that solid 32% of the MAGA, people that will not let it go because now their ego's involved, right, Corey? Now their ego's involved. Now, because of their personalities and because they're so narcissistic within themselves, they can't admit because their ego's involved. They can't admit that they were wrong.
They're feeding off of the collective narcissism of Trump, and it seems like they're all just defending their egos, and they can't at least admit they're wrong here, and come to a moment of contrition where it seems like our nation has to come to a contrition and to say, look, we've been going down this road for a long time. And if you want to keep on throwing, fuel on the fire, that's how you're going to get a war. And to anybody who's defending war, I would just say that they're a sad and pathetic human being. And I don't think most people even really believe in a war. So when you can sit back and you can say, yeah, that's justified, and you didn't even make a decision, I feel like that's the cowardice of humanity that comes out, because they didn't even have to flip the switch to begin with.
Yeah, and you know what, Corey? I challenge people all the time, friends and family, friends who are still MAGAs that I still talk to once in a while. I challenge them, say, name one thing that they accomplished with the war. Name one thing. And then the first thing they say is, well, no nuclear weapons. That's not a thing. That's not a real thing. They didn't have nuclear weapons. So to say that, now you could back up and say that they were headed that way and we didn't like that, but then you got to get into the enriched uranium and you got to get into the negotiations. And then basically Iran blockaded the Strait of Hormuz and made it impossible for anyone to go through, which raised gas prices all over the world. And then Trump puts a blockade and said, we're putting up a blockade to block their blockade. Does that make any sense to you, Corey? Did he not say that?
Of course not.
Oh, yeah, I have an idea. Let's put up, now I'm going to put up a blockade. And you're like, well, they already set up a blockade. And didn't a Russian tanker just go, no, I'm sorry, a Chinese tanker just went through, untouched, just a day ago. What's going on with that?
This is called, Leonard, this is called having a clown in chief. That's what this is called. And of course, so he can only try afterward, after the fact, to say, oh, but I did it better. It's like, yeah, but you're the one who's being controlled here. So, of course, Trump can't admit that he's the one being controlled. He's the one being led into a bad situation.
Corey, you sound, let me just say, you sound like a smart guy. Is it possible that the President of the United States does not even have a grasp of geopolitics or macroeconomics? Is it possible that he doesn't even understand micro and macroeconomics? I mean, are we that far off the mark?
Of course not. He doesn't understand the damn thing. He won't even listen to the real people in our country who could give him sound advice.
$20 billion to Iran. Does that sound like America first?
Of course not.
$40 billion to a South American country. Does that sound like America first? Gas prices. Oh, and by the way, when they asked Trump about the gas prices, they said, are you worried about the rising gas prices? And he said, no, not really. You know what, Corey? Spoken like a true billionaire. Spoken like a true guy who's never been to the pump and never had to pump even 1 gallon of gas.
Exactly. And it's so true. It's so true. And I know you've got to get on with the show, so I also just wanted to say as a last point, I think Brian absolutely trounced Rachel Wilson last night. I think that was an entire joke of an entire debate, and that it was far and away that Brian won that debate. And I just want to say that I want to see more debates like that take place, because there's people who are basically on the side of women having less rights than they do now.
Yeah, and how can anybody, especially Rachel Wilson, how can she support that? You know, I mean, if you want to be anti-feminist, that's your choice. But Brian supports feminism, and then they're saying he's a talking point robot, which is not true. Brian understands the rights of women. Brian understands, and so do I. I think women should be able to vote. I'm glad that they say they don't need men to be successful in life. They could become a professional. They could become the owner of a charitable organization, and they should be able to choose whatever they want to do in life and not have limitations because they're female. So there, I said it. And thank you for the call, Corey. It was a good call. And let me just say, in the live chat, there's a Karen who is a dissenter of Brian's, especially about last night, and says in the live chat that he's thinking about calling in. Let me just ask, why are you thinking about it? I mean, what's the hesitation? If you feel so strongly that Brian, you don't agree with Brian or with myself or with the show, then why are you thinking about calling in? That sounds like a little bit of maybe you might be worried about how the call goes, because it's easy to be in a room and it's easy to stack up your comments when no one can say anything else about it. Now we're going to go to line 2, and we're going to talk to Patrick. Patrick, hi, this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Leonard, man, I'm enjoying the conversation. Hilarious, dude. Great stuff. So hearing you talk about how you guys are against political violence while at the same time y'all staged someone that's just been indicted for political violence, very interesting there, of course.
Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about?
The couple that Brian had on the other night that just got indicted for pushing Savannah Hernandez, right? So,
before we get into that, and I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second, Patrick. So before we get into that, Brian, before anything, said he doesn't condone political violence, and so there's you have to separate it. There's not condoning political violence, but then there's interviewing people who are involved in something that went viral to try to get their side of the story. So I don't see how they're the same. But go ahead.
He's defending their stance and saying that what they did was not political violence, and anybody that saw that knows that was
Brian did not say that. That's not accurate. For those people listening, Brian never said that. That is not accurate.
Notes that the lawyer he read the cliff notes that the lawyer gave him. That's what he did.
Okay,
he defended their case.
So let me ask you something, Patrick. Was anybody charged with a crime?
Hey, please. Yeah, they were just indicted. So we'll see. They're going to court, and if that's your standard, like Brian. I mean, you guys really need to get it together. And then the other thing is political rhetoric. You just played a clip of Brian calling the guy a member of the KKK, saying that he was going to a Klan meeting. I mean, you guys are the channel of the guy that he was listening to people like y'all, the guy that just tried to kill Trump. That was it. That was his manifesto. Everything that y'all say every day.
So when Gavin was comparing January 6th to some violence that happened overseas in the Middle East and saying they were the same thing. So you agree with Gavin's assertion?
We're talking about this channel's rhetoric. We're talking about your rhetoric.
What rhetoric?
That you think it's fun. You think it's funny that Trump that Brian just called the guy a KKK Klan member. Again, y'all's channel.
First of all, Patrick, I understand that you're upset. What I would do is invite you to call tomorrow, because Brian will be back tomorrow. And I would invite you to call him and discuss his rhetoric and what he chooses to say, because as you watch these debates, it gets very, very personal. And so Brian, if they get personal with him, he's not. I can't speak for Brian. I'm a grown man.
You just thought it was funny. You played.
I did think it was funny. I thought it was funny because he called him out.
The rhetoric of the left is not bad, and that the left doesn't have angry rhetoric or violent rhetoric. If you start implying that everybody's member of the KKK and pedophiles and this and that and Hitler-like, then yeah, you're going to create these guys like this Cole guy that did what he did. And you guys make claims on stuff that y'all don't even have evidence.
So you don't see any correlation between ICE throwing people on the ground and asking for their papers and what happened in the past in Nazi Germany. You don't see any parallel, any correlation at all, right?
No, I'm saying all y'all do is virtue signal, and like last night, bringing up Rachel's dead son, dead child in an argument. What kind of person does that? That is a shallow, just low-life son of a gun. I mean, that is unbelievable that he did that. And the fact that someone would come on here and say that they think he won the debate, they don't know what a debate is. He never made his argument on why he was an advocate of feminism.
Are you going to call in tomorrow and discuss this with Brian? Because
I'm waiting for you to defend his stance, or waiting for you to defend the fact that he brought up a dead child in the debate.
I really have to apologize, Patrick. I was preparing for this show. And like I said before, but let me finish. Because even if I watched the video, even if I had an opinion on the video, Brian wants to analyze it fresh tomorrow when he's back on the show. So I'm not shying away from it, and we can certainly talk about it on the other side. But Brian is going to go over that in detail tomorrow.
The other debate was out yesterday. Pierce didn't come out till this morning. We had access to the debate all last night. It's already gone viral on TikTok. Rachel's performance was unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen a debate that bad, to be honest with you. I mean, it
Well,
never
you know,
once
we're
made
all
an
entitled
argument
to
for
our
feminism.
opinion, and the point is,
So what was his stance in his opening argument why feminism was good? In the opening stance, you've seen the beginning. You said you've seen it a little bit. What was his stance in the opening just for feminism?
are you talking about in the debate last night?
Yes, in any stance at all.
I only watched
at any point
short
last night,
parts of it.
Did he ever? I watched the whole thing. I think I watched parts of it.
All right.
Probably
Well then, why don't you call tomorrow and talk to Brian about it? I believe my stance is that I think feminism is a good thing. It's good for females. They stand up for themselves. They show a strength. They say they don't need anybody to help them, and they can stand on their own. And they want equality. They want equality with pay and with promotions, and they want equality. And if they're qualified, feminists believe that they should be promoted over a man who's less qualified. It's things like that that are important, not whether or not it belongs in our society. And if you're anti-feminism, I would say that, yes, I would say you have an issue with women.
So how has feminism been good for the country?
Well, that's subjective, Patrick. That's subjective. That's some people's opinion, whether it's been good or not. It's not a provable fact. Has the 19th Amendment been good for the country? The fact that women could vote and have driver's licenses and get educated, has that been good for the country? Are you saying, well, you know, I don't believe women should be able to vote?
I'm with Rachel, and I think even Brian made it in his conclusion that women have nothing to give to society. There's nothing that they're forced to do. And that really, at the end of
Brian
the day,
did not. There's no way Brian said that. I didn't even listen to it, and I can tell you that there's no way.
The best thing women can do is have children for this country. That's the most important thing that they can do to serve this country. Is have
Who said
children. And
that sounds like a Republican. The Republicans believe that women should have babies. They should stay home. It should be like the 1950s, and they should not be able to assert themselves. They should not be able to vote. Did you know there's Republican legislation right now as we speak saying that? Hold on.
What is the most valuable thing that a woman can do for the country?
What I was trying to say, I'm going to finish my point. There's legislation right now, voting legislation, that says that the Republicans want it so that if a woman is married and has her husband's last name, it's not the name on their birth certificate, it's not their original name, and so their vote's not going to count. Now, does that sound like anti-feminism to me? Because it does. What, just because my wife took my last name, her vote's not going to count because it's not the one that was on her birth certificate? So let's call it like it is, Patrick. Let's not dance around the issue.
Call it secure voting. That's a way to secure your vote. That's a way to secure our whole system.
Right, and that makes no sense. But thank you for the call, Patrick. Unfortunately, going to have to cut you short. We have a lot of people on hold, and we're going to get to Andrew next. Andrew, hi, it's Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was wondering, and I know you're subbing in for Brian right now, but when is Brian actually going to address those allegations that Sarah Fields published a few years ago?
I think he's talked about it several times. I don't think he is going to shy away from it. And like I said, when Brian's here, I would encourage you, Andrew, to call back in and to talk to Brian. It's really hard to be talking to Leonard on the phone and be asking about what's in Brian's mind. Now, I know Brian fairly well. I know his position on politics, on women, on abortion, things like that. But I cannot answer intimate questions on his beliefs for him. So we're going to move on. We're going to go to Paul on line 5. Line 5. Paul, hi, it's Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hi, Leonard. Yeah, I just, when you're on hold, you can't hear anybody. So I hope I'm not, repeating anything. But I just want to refer to something you said very early on about the role of the king in the UK. It wasn't quite correct, Leonard. I mean, in the UK, the king is supposed to be apolitical, or the queen for that matter. But what they are ambassadors for the character of the country. They're like the principal ambassador. And when they visit a country, it's almost an endorsement of the relationship with that country. Okay. Now, they are supposed to be apolitical, which in a way is what pleased and surprised practically the whole of Britain about the speech.
I don't think it was apolitical at all, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Normally, they work within those tram lines of not of being apolitical within the country, at least. But the speech he made, it surprised us all. I went on another chat show, a famous English one, LBC, and I said the best result would be nothing, neutral, and the worst result is that Trump would mock Britain again, or do something really embarrassing that talk about Lady Di or something.
Well,
But
I appreciate you clarifying. And what's interesting about that dynamic is that, as you know, the citizens fund the royal family. They still pay millions and millions of dollars so that the royal family can exist.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's an interesting concept, because they do have a tremendous amount of political power and they have a tremendous amount of money, but ultimately they're not really in charge of the what your version of Congress would be. House of Commons. I'm not sure what it's called.
No. They've got nothing. Not even slightly. Not even remotely.
Right.
Do they have power in the House? None at all. Zero. Theoretically, on paper, they have some enormous and bizarre powers, which you would never believe, but they would never dare exercise them. I mean, not since Charles the Second have we had a monarch in the real sense, a king in the real sense of a king. Like a mad King George, he was a proper king. He could do anything.
That's why I thought it was interesting, Paul, that he brought up the Magna Carta. I mean, he's establishing that centuries and centuries ago that this was decided for England. And, as you know, when we left 250 years ago, we modeled much of what we do in America after England at that time.
Absolutely. And the huge irony here, if looking at the whole thing, the whole Trump thing, is that Trumpism is a return to what you threw away 250 years ago. Well, quite rightly, in my opinion. What you escaped from was the idea of a king, of a single person ruling over all the people. And Trump wants to return you to that.
Well, that was decided in the year 1215. So that was quite a long time ago when they decided that monarchies were still not above the law.
That's right. But I sometimes used to have, when I was on Twitter, I used to get attacked by various MAGA types, and they would say you're ruled by a king, and it used to make me laugh, or a queen at the time, because I say we're not. They're not like a king and queen like you see on a movie.
Right. And I'm glad that you called, because we need people like you, Paul, to clarify and to let us know, so that people better understand what exactly happened yesterday and how much of it a surprise was. Always a good call from you, Paul.
Extraordinary. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for taking the call, Dennis.
Thanks, Paul.
Good work.
Okay. Line 2 next. Donna. Hi, Donna.
Yes.
This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hi. Was it Andrew who was asking what women could do for this country?
You talking about the caller?
Yes.
Yeah, he was claiming that Brian said, they can have babies. That's what they can do. That is not Brian's position.
Yeah. Then why is Ducksworth? Is she a congressman or a senator?
Who?
Her last name is Ducksworth, and I can't. She lost both her legs in the war.
I believe she's a congressman.
I think so too. A congresswoman. Well, that's what women can do for this country. She lost her legs in a war. I'm wondering if Andrew was ever in the service.
No, I don't know the guy personally, but here's the problem. You have this MAGA caller calling in, and he's pissed.
Yep.
And he wants to know, he wants to tear Brian down on it. And I said like 4 or 5 times on the show, I didn't really watch the entire debate, which I didn't want to, because I was preparing for this show. And even if I did, even if I watched every minute of it, it's really not my place to start to, explain Brian and defend Brian Shapiro when he's going to be on the show tomorrow and he's going to analyze it.
Right.
And you know what? Andrew can call back and he can ask him personally. I cannot tell you what's inside another person's mind when they make a statement. I can tell you that Brian agrees with feminism, as I do. We understand it. We know it's part of the backbone of women in America. And a lot of it is unlike anywhere else in the world, where the women in this country have just as many rights and just as many opportunities as everyone else. And is there still some anti-feminism out there? And are Republicans, pro let's leave the wife in the kitchen taking care of the kids and and doing our bidding? Yeah, they seem to be very chauvinistic. Not all of them, but as a group they seem to be very chauvinistic. And so I don't know where Andrew comes off trying to twist that around, and I'm certainly not going to let him do it to me.
No, I mean, there's women in the service. There's a woman who ran out in space, and he's knocking women down. I'd like to know what he does for a living. I hope he does call back tomorrow.
Well, you mean like his job? Because who knows if he has a job? He may just be one of those people that sits home and gets angry and starts to stew, at comments and get angry and want to call in. And he wasn't very polite. I don't mind people talking at the same time as me, but I'll give you your turn. But when it's time for me to talk or you ask a question, then I need to talk. And so he seemed to be very fired up, and it was a good call. Though, Donna, thank you for the call. And we're running short on time, so I'm going to say have a good day.
He said that you too.
Line 5. So we're going to Andrew. Go ahead, Andrew. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, Leonard, how we doing?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good time.
So I don't want to attack you on the Brian stuff. That has nothing to do with you.
Thank you, because that would just be a waste of time. So
yeah, it's completely off topic. Now on the Pete Hegseth stuff.
Well,
do you believe that with the new media and how everything is out there and all the discussions are out there, do you believe, as a military person, it is a good idea?
What a good idea? Did we lose him? Did he hang up? Andrew, I think we lost you, so you may have to. Are you back, Andrew?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a
hear me?
second. Go ahead. My apologies.
Sorry, that's no problem. So with the Pete Hegseth stuff and the way he's going at Congress right now, do you believe that as a military person, it is a good objective in the current media landscape to put the U.S.'s military objectives in front of the world, in front of our enemies, instead of keeping them back so that they don't know what our actual objectives are?
No, and I would agree with you 100%. And when you say military person, you mean Pete Hegseth, not me. I was not in the military.
Yes, Pete Hegseth.
And so
do you think it's a good idea?
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about strategy, and you're talking about media and how much information to put out. And, well, let me finish. It's never a good idea to expose your strategy. But at the same time, let me turn it around and ask you a question.
Sure.
If you're saying that we're days away, now remember, it's been weeks, because he was saying we're a day or two away from ending the war, and the Strait of Hormuz is going to open tomorrow, and then they attack an island, and now they have 15,000 more troops and another aircraft carrier. I think the third aircraft carrier, if I'm not mistaken, went to the Red Sea, right? Because you have the Gulf of Iran, and then you have the Persian Gulf, and then you also have the Red Sea on the other side. And then we found out that they were sneaking oil and other types of munitions and things in through the Red Sea and kind of going around the long way, right? And so what I would say is if Pete Hegseth and Trump and the administration is kind of smart, and this is what I see, they've been putting out a lot of information, but none of it accurate. None of it accurate.
Isn't that intentional?
I would say not only is it intentional, I would say it's absolutely necessary. You have to misguide, and you have to let people know. What Americans are upset about is you can tell them the goal. You don't have to hide the ball on what the goal is. And right now they don't even know what the goal is.
Well, why would you tell your enemy the goal?
Well, the goal is what supports America. Remember, you need American support.
Completely understand.
You need financial support. So you do have to tell them a certain amount. We're not saying we're going to go put ground troops in, and our goal is to take over Carg Island, right? In other words, that would be a terrible idea to say that, right? But if they're saying that they want to change the regime, which they did, they changed the regime. They traded bad for bad, or bad for worse. They got a younger, more erratic.
We don't know that yet. That's
Trump,
all
the only thing Trump will say is that
all
First, he said they were
speculative.
better.
The new
He said
leader
they're getting
has not
better, and we're
said
talking
anything.
to certain people who are agreeing. Now he's saying he don't know who they're talking to, and he doesn't know who's in charge.
That's all speculative. We don't know who
That's
they're
not
talking to.
speculative.
We don't
That's what
even
he
know
said.
if his son is still alive.
Whether it's
still don't
accurate or
even
not
know
is he may be dead. He hasn't been shown on TV since, but at the same time,
Exactly.
he may not want to show himself on TV because everybody that gets exposed gets assassinated. So, maybe
Right, but
he's.
what I'm saying is, when you're in these conflicts, why do they need to promote it to the world? I understand you're understanding the American people should understand what's going on. The problem is when you expose that in a military conflict, you're letting the enemy gain information that you have.
Well, specific strategies notwithstanding,
want to know
and I'll
everything.
tell you, there's one reason. This is the biggest reason for Hegseth and Trump. This is the biggest reason. It's not their money, and that's why Hegseth can go in front of Congress and say, "Yeah, it's $25 billion to replenish, and it's going to be $1.5 trillion." You know why? You know why, Andrew? I don't know what kind of person you are, but it's not their money. And if you want to spend our money instead of Trump's money, you want to spend our money, then you better have the American people on your side. And the only way to get them on your side is to explain what exactly you're doing over there. And they haven't accomplished any of their goals. None of them.
Sure, I can agree with you on that. But who is the biggest weapon producer in the world? Which economy gets the biggest benefit from weapons?
I would assume the United. I think the United States.
Yes, it's ours.
Our spending is when we spent $800 billion last year, that was 25 times the next closest country.
Our economy.
Is it good for the economy? No,
terrible. Yes, people get killed. It sounds horrible, but military spending does stimulate our economy.
Yeah, well, not for me.
And I don't think people like
not for me, and not for a lot of people in the live chat, and not for a lot of people listening. I'm going to let you go, Andrew. Sorry, we're going to have to leave it there because I have so many calls. Interesting call. I hope you call back. You sound like you like to make some good points. Next, we're going to line 1, Nelson. Is it the Nelson that calls regularly?
Okay. Yeah. Hello, Leonard. How are you? Yeah, it's Nelson. This is Nelson.
Hi, Nelson.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to talk about the debate yesterday. I said Brian was going to get cooked, and I thought he lost the debate. And,
yeah, but I can't really speak to that, Nelson, because like I told, I think it's about the 10th time I told people that I didn't watch the debate. I watched a little bit of it, but I was preparing for the show. And Brian is going to come on fresh, and he's going to go over the debate in detail tomorrow. So you may want to call back for that. But if you have another comment, we had some MAGA callers today and trying to make a point, but really didn't get anywhere. Maybe you can help them, some of the MAGA callers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not MAGA, definitely not MAGA. I'll never be MAGA. I'm just kind of a regular person who's identifies as right-leaning, for the most part, not entirely. But I'm definitely not a hardcore Republican MAGA like those people.
Well, that's really ambivalent.
So, anyways, I thought,
you're right, but center, but you're not sure, but you're leaning.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I lean a little bit more right than left for sure. I'm not going to lie, So,
okay. Well, unfortunately, we're not talking about the debate, so maybe you can call back tomorrow. We're going to leave it. We're going to have to leave it there, and we're going to go to line 2. It sounds like Herb is on the line. Herb, this is Leonard. What's going on?
Hey, Leonard, how you doing, buddy? Listen, I wanted to ask you something. I know that you're a Christian. You're Catholic. I've heard you read scripture
correct
on the air. And I just wanted to ask, I know that's probably where you get your ethics from and your beliefs and things like that. Have you ever, not on the air, but on the side, have you ever talked to Brian about how he mocks prayer and he calls Trump Cheeto Jesus? Have you ever talked to him about that? And
no, unfortunately, Herb, that is not my role. Whenever there's a grown man and another grown man, that would be like me, telling you and wanting to ask you why you call up and try to get Brian with gotcha questions all the time, like saying there were weapons of mass destruction and things that aren't accurate. And you and I could have that talk, but it's not my role to tell. Remember, Brian had a very successful show and has a very successful show long before I came along. And I co-host with him once a week because I enjoy it. But it is not my role to change. That would be like going to Howard Stern and saying to Howard Stern, hey, why do you sometimes insult people? Why do you sometimes insult gays, or why do you sometimes insult? That's his style. That's his shtick. So Howard Stern got famous on that. Brian Shapiro got popular on his style and what he says. And people in the live chat and people that call in, they enjoy him, roasting these MAGAs and not taking any crap from them. So that's not the answer is it's not my role.
Okay, it is your role because you're a Christian. And if someone who like Brian,
Well, it's not your role to tell me it's my role.
Wait, let me say this. If he's a friend of yours and you care anything about him, you would be concerned about the fact that he's making statements and he's mocking prayer and talking about he's praying to Jesus and things like that on the air and making a mockery.
Well, let me ask you, Herb, is that satire? When Brian does that, is that satire or is that reality or is that satirical?
When it's satirical, you don't.
Yes, it does matter. Yes, it does. When it's satire, it's political comedy, and no one thinks that Brian is hitting his knees at night praying to Jesus. That's just satire, and so I would say.
Oh, so it's satire when you make fun of Jesus and when you make fun of prayer. That's blasphemy. Now, man, I thought maybe you.
Well, he's Jewish anyway. He's not a Christian. He's Jewish anyway. So
I understand that, but the point being is that you still don't make fun of another religion. I never hear him talking about.
Well, if you want to come on the show and berate Brian when he's back, it's really not my place to talk about another man, and especially a successful.
You know what, Leonard?
person.
I have never heard you disagree with Brian, and all the time you've been on this show, anything that Brian says, you agree with.
No, we have clips. There's clips where I've stopped Brian and I said, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I have done that on the show. You can look through the clips.
About what?
And
about what, Brian? About what, Leonard?
It was, man, I think something to do with.
You got to think hard, buddy.
Well, I mean, it was months. It was a couple of months ago. I don't memorize the shows, but anyway, thanks Herb for calling. It's always good to hear from you. We're gonna have to leave it there, and we're gonna go to line 5, Jason. Hi, Jason. Is Leonard? What's on your mind?
Okay, first of all, Andrew must not know American history. If the American public doesn't know, American public turns against not only a country, but against soldiers. If he knew history in Vietnam, when we didn't have knowledge, the soldiers came home and got spit on. So obviously he doesn't know American history for him to say strategy. You must let the American people know what's going on, or you don't have the public behind him. That's number one. Number two, dumb Donald Trump doesn't know math because that ballroom only holds 1,600. The White House correspondent had 2,600. So, and not only that, it's a private organization. They're not going to be a part of that ballroom. So he's in another moronic situation. And last but not least, to all MAGA that's out there, Proverbs 29:12 says, when your leader is full of lies and a liar, that means all of you are wicked. All of you are wicked because you follow a liar. And other than that, I digress.
Yeah, and a lot of these MAGAs claim they're Christians, but they must not have read the part of the Bible where liars are considered against God. So thank you, Jason. Always a good call. What line are we going to? Line 6. Looks like Mike. We're going to Mike. Mike, hi, this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, Leonard, how's it going?
Good. We got a good mix of calls today.
What's that?
We had a good mix of calls. That's how today. So
Yes, we have.
What's on your mind?
What's going on is Trump doesn't like to listen to scientists on all this global warming stuff. Like we're seeing all the tornadoes increase and seeing the hurricanes. Like Colorado, this whole winter, we've been so bone dry that Trump mentioned to Colorado that Colorado needs to give water out to other states. We don't have it even for ourselves. They're shutting down. The cities are going to 2 watering days a week, if that. And a lot of them say if it gets worse, it'll be totally shut off. You can't water your own lawn.
Well, you know what I've always wondered, Mike, and I remember Bill Maher bringing this up years ago when he was still kind of a liberal. Now he's very conservative, and some of the stuff he says is almost MAGA, in my opinion. But he said years ago, if the drought is in Nevada, and the drought is in Colorado, and the drought is in Arizona, California, and all the states, and they don't have enough water. And then New York City and the states on the East Coast are getting flooded, and Louisiana and some of them, in the South where, the levees can't even hold back the water. And if they can make a pipeline that goes from one side of the country to the other for gas, right? Why can't they make a pipeline that goes from the states or the parts of the United States that has all the water to the parts that have no water? What is the problem? Is it just political, or is it money? I've always asked that.
Yeah, I wonder that too.
Is it that hard to build a pipeline? Because when there was money to be made, they did it. They built a pipeline from one side of America to the other to pump, I think, natural gas, or I think it's natural gas. And so obviously it's easy, but thank you for the comments, Mike. We're going to have to leave it there. We're trying to get in as many callers as we can. We're running low. We're going to go to Tammy. Hello, Tammy. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, I wanted to say something about Herb.
Go ahead.
And his hypocrisy, because he's not mad about the blasphemy that Trump committed with that Jesus picture.
Yeah. And that's the self-righteous, holier than thou. And he's trying to accuse us of that and other people, but that's that holier than thou that, that a lot of people on the right and the MAGAs seem to want to bring down. You remember, aren't Republicans, haven't they always been known as the Bible thumpers? Haven't they always been known as the people?
Only Christian when it's convenient.
Yeah, but do they read the Bible? That's my question, Tammy. Do they read it? What about the part about feeding the hungry? What about the part of taking care of sick children and taking care of the elderly and helping people in need and loving your brother? What about all that? Did they not read that part?
They skip it. They're only Christian on Sunday, and the rest of the week they're evil as the devil.
Right. So they pick out one sentence and they go, aha, we got you on this one. And then obviously they don't get you. But thank you for the call, Tammy. We're going to have to leave it there. We're going to go to line 4. Darlene, is that the MAGA destroyer, Darlene? Hi, Darlene.
Yes. Hi, Leonard. Leonard, you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Darlene.
I got some things to say, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
First of all, Leonard, let me tell you the reason I never had children in my life. Because I was always afraid it was going to end up like Herb, Norman, and Patrick. Them 3 little whiny little idiots. But I have something to say to Patrick. Mr. Patrick, good old Patrick. You think you're all tough, honey? Go to hell. You go to hell for me and every woman in the world, because you don't know nothing. And I guarantee you, there's some WWE women out there. Liv Morgan could kick your butt, buddy. So don't sit there and start cutting down women. And women are smart. I may not be the smartest out there, but I'll tell you one dang thing. There is a lot of women, and I would be embarrassed to be your mother. Because I would never want to have a kid like you. And they taught Leonard, they say those whining liberals. That Patrick was whining. That's all he did.
That's what they do. And ladies like Kamala Harris and Jasmine Crockett, who has multiple degrees, who is highly, highly educated. And for some reason, and I don't know why, Darlene, people like Patrick are just offended. They're offended by these smart, brilliant, energetic women who are getting somewhere in life. And it just seems to rub them the wrong way. And I don't understand why.
They're jealous and they're scared. They're scared of women. They know what women can do, and they're scared. And let me tell you something, Herb, Brian does not do that. Brian does not cut down other people's religion and all that. You are full of crap, and I'm sick of you too.
Well, he was trying to take some satirical material. He was trying to take some satirical material that, Brian was making a joke saying, "Oh, I'm praying right now, praying to Jesus," and Howard Stern and other comedians do the same thing, and it's satirical. It's a joke, and he's making believe that he didn't understand that. But we have to leave it there, Darlene, because we're running up against the clock, and we always appreciate you calling. We love everyone out there loves you. People in the live chat love you, the PTL Nation, and thank you so much for calling in. We going to another line? Okay, we're going to leave it there. Today we ran out of time, and I actually had more material to cover, but just so much going on in the world. It's difficult. Thank you so much for everyone, the good callers and the bad callers and everybody. Thank you for your input. We do appreciate it because it ignites debate and ignites ideas in their mind. And Brian will be back tomorrow talking about the debate with Rachel Wilson. So don't forget, he may have more clips from the Piers Morgan show. And you were listening to Pushing the Limits Talk Radio Show live with your guest, Leonard Cardinelli. See you soon. Have a good day.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road.